Hi guys, welcome to another live with me, Clarice. Happy Sunday. I know it's been a while since we've done, because of me traveling and having watercolor events in the vineyards and things like that, but we're back at it and hope most of you can join me, and if not, you're watching the replay. Okay, so I just want to make sure real quick that you guys are able to hear me. So if you are able to hear me, please make sure you maybe make a quick comment in the comment section so I know. And then we can go from there. Okay, so today we are doing, if you missed the previous video or the most recent video on my YouTube channel. Oh, awesome. Thanks, Usha. We painted, or I did a tutorial on the chrysanthemums from our favorite book, the Flower Color Guidebook. And that was on page 338, I believe. Yep, right there. So hope you guys had a chance to check that out, because we're going to be dabbling in more chrysanthemums today. And I've been getting a lot of questions about compositions and things like that. So we'll do a little bit of that as well. But I want to quickly also mention, don't forget that we've got the holiday postcard special happening. And today is the last day to get it at an early bird pricing. So make sure you sign up before today is done. I'm just going to give you a quick peek of the door we're going to be painting. So this is the base drawing. I'm going to make sure I scan it, so this way you guys have it available for when we begin, which is going to be November 16th. We'll be painting. Okay, so it's going to be 5 videos, and we're doing a door, a chair, a bear. I know they rhyme, and 2 other things I can't quite remember, but they've been listed on YouTube, they've been listed on Instagram, so check it out and sign up before it reverts back to regular pricing. Okay, all right, so let me quickly talk about the supplies I'm using here. So I'm going to be using my Princeton Velvetouch brushes, which is going to be most likely the number 8, number 4, and I'll just leave the other 2 aside in case I feel like using it, it's there. But these will be the main. And then for colors, I am going to be using my Daler-Rowney Aquafine set of 48. I am loving the roster of different shades that it comes in, and so I'm still having some fun playing around with it and working with it. And then finally, in terms of paper, we're going to be using the ETCHR watercolor block, and it's got great texture, and I absolutely love it for, painting on a whim and just getting carried away, or just having a paint session. And it's also a great size in my opinion. So 14.8 by 21 or 5.8 by 8.3 inches, which is great. 50% cotton, by the way, not 100, but still does a good job. So we will be doing the chrysanthemums, as I said, the Astilbe, and then I want to do some of the Solomon seal that I had done a couple of weeks ago. Okay. All right. Hi, Patty. Good morning. Okay. Oh, and last but not least, speaking about texture and stuff, I want to make sure that you guys are also aware of the silver lining prints that are currently live on the website. So these are prints printed on giclée paper, and they're printed at an amazing print company in London with artwork by yours truly. So make sure you check it out if you are interested for holiday gifts or what have you. These come packaged really well, and it is free shipping, guys. So yeah, check that out. All right, let's begin. So really quickly, Thanks, Patty. Zach had a great day yesterday. Yesterday was my brother's birthday as well, Zach, and that's why I decided to release the Prince yesterday, because he's like our silver lining in our family. Hi, Maria. Welcome. Maria's first time doing a live here, so I'm excited. Maria's done most of the classes with me, but she's never really done a live, and I was very shocked to hear that. But she's here today. Okay, I also want to make sure that you guys have paper towel for this session, because I mentioned everything with the exception of paper towel. I'm going to keep this little thing handy here for me, because I cannot seem to find any paper towel. My preference is paper towel though, just because it's so much easier. And I'm using my palette by Lisi Arts today. Got it washed and we are ready. Okay, so let's talk composition real quick. Okay, so while we're doing this, because I'm getting a lot of questions about composition and things like that. So I'm just gonna quickly say, when I put out these videos, like with the chrysanthemums and all these other regular one-off flowers, it is so that you guys learn the technique, and then you sort of, when you sit down to paint next, and you just go on a whim and you paint everything you've sort of already learned through muscle memory and through repetition. Now, when it comes to composing and making sure, and if you're unsure like how to compose and where to place things, I suggest either doing more of my videos, where usually the Sunday lives I do a lot of compositions and I talk about the compositions as well, or if you're more of a stationary visual kind of person, I would suggest getting the Flower Color Theory book, which is an extension of the Flower Color Guidebook, and I think it's great in terms of, it's got a lot of different compositions here. Some of them are very full, as you can see, and then there's some that are quite cute and quaint. So like, for instance, if you wanted to do something small, here's a cute little vase with, I think this is a grapefruit, if I'm not mistaken. So they've got lots of different ideas. In addition to this, there's always the internet. You can always Google bridal bouquets or, you know, like flower compositions, and I'm sure you'll get tons of inspiration online. But these are just a few of my quick ideas. Again, see smaller vases with cute little flowers already. And the nice thing about this book is that it uses the flowers that we are learning from the Flower Color Guidebook. So, for instance, we did this one right here, which is the Peace Lily. And I think we've done a version of this peony as well. And obviously berries, I pretty much do them in almost all. And I believe these are the butterfly ranunculus right here. So, you know, just a suggestion, if you guys are really keen on improving your compositions, these are a couple of tips that I can say would work right off the bat. Also, in terms of color combination, this would be helpful, because now you're trying colors that you typically would not combine together, maybe, right? So, yeah. That's my 2 cents on that. So I'm going to put this aside, and we're going to start with our flowers. What I would like to do is get some mixing happening with colors. Actually, before I start, I'm seeing there's a bunch of comments here. Hi Andy. Hi Kathy. Hi Dolores. Hi Anne-Marie. Have you ever footage work, for instance, fruited your leaf or flowers using different materials? Oh, wow. Okay, so frottage is a new word, and I am not sure what that means, lollipop strawberry. So I'm not quite sure what you're asking me right now. Do you want to elaborate maybe, and then I can try answering? Hi, Jill. Hi, Karen. Hi, Rosa. Okay, all right, let's start. Let me just make sure I'm able to see, just in case things happen. Better. Okay. So let's start off with doing some of the chrysanthemums, because, actually no, before the chrysanthemums, I'll make the chrysanthemums our secondary flowers, and let's do a nice big loose floral, maybe something more like a peony style flower. And then we'll do our chrysanthemums around it, and then we'll end off with some leaves and some berry elements around. So I'll do the one main flower, maybe 2 or 3 chrysanthemums, perhaps 2 at the top and 1 down, and then we'll figure things out, okay? So here we go. Let's mix, because I'm doing a bigger floral. I'm going to keep this brush handy, which is the quill number 4, because it's nice and big and would give me nice loose detail. I really like the Velvetouch brushes. The reason I'm not using this for this particular flower is mainly because it's got a nice pointed tip, and I don't necessarily want things to end off in a narrow kind of stroke. So I'm going to use this one, but I will use the number 8 to mix some color. So let's mix some color. I'm going to mix, now I'm using my Daler-Rowney collection here, so I know you guys might not have all of this. So I'm going to mix, what is this? This is the Permanent Rose. Seems like a nice, pretty, mauvey pink. I'm just going to get some of that happening here. And then you guys know I like to have 2 colors happening at the same time, so I'm definitely going to be mixing another, either darker version of this or maybe more of a, yeah, no, definitely a darker version of this. I think this can be the light color. I'm actually going to keep these cakes outside, so if I need more, I can always get more. So there's one, and then I'm going to mix this with, what's this? Alizarin Crimson Hue. Okay. Hopefully I pronounced that right, and if not, I'm sure someone will correct me. Okay, I think these would go fairly well. I don't need this much color, but it works. And finally, I want to do a center for this flower, so I'm going to make that a yellow. So let's do, got tons of yellows here. So I'm gonna get, let's get this one here. What is this? This is Gamboge Hue. And then obviously I'll do a little bit of a darker shade to get some nice shadows for the center. And for that we'll use like a brown. So possibly, let me see, with all the browns that I have here. What is this? This is raw umber. Let's try a little bit of the raw umber. It might be a bit too dark though. So you know what? Hold on. I'm gonna get this guy right here, and this is raw sienna. Okay, let's do a little bit of raw sienna with the gamboge yellow. Okay, so I'm gonna start my main floral in the center here, and I'm using my number 4, and then we'll go in once we're ready to do the petals with the mop brush. So if you have a mop, that works too. So for the centers, I'm just going to go and do light lines like this. So making sure I've got decent blend here of color and water. And I'm lightly going to go and do it in a circle, but more like an oval. Actually, not a circle, so more like an oval. So tallest at the top and then short little dabs at the bottom. Trying to make it sporadic, trying to make it uneven, different sorts of thicknesses, and leaving a lot of white space right in the center there, okay? And then what I want to do is get a little bit more of that yellow, and I'm just going to lightly dot around. And you'll see where I'm going with this in a second. I'm going to get some of that brown right away. And by brown, I mean the raw sienna. And I'm just going to add a little bit of that happening just in, like, I'm just dotting it. I'm literally dotting it right now in between the yellow, and it's giving me a nice sort of blend in with the yellow. Okay. All right, perfect. I'm good with that. So now we're going to go in and do our flower. So I'm getting my mop, Now this is a massively huge mop brush for me. If you have the Da Vinci one, that's totally fine. You can use that as well. I'm going to start off with the light pink that I blended. And we're going to do, like I mentioned, we're doing petals that are reminiscent of peonies, right? So lots of white space, very loose, watered down for sure. And you want the strokes to be loose. And notice how I am stopping right where we did the outer yellow. I'm leaving white space in between as well, giving a good enough, nice little different shapes for our petals. Notice how the yellow is like blending in with that pink, which is just gorgeous. That is what I'm looking for. Now the thing with this is, and I always sort of tend to lose track, is to make sure that I don't make these too big, because if I make it too big, then I'm not having enough space for our chrysanthemum. So I need to keep that in mind, okay? So you guys also need to keep that in mind as you're painting along with me. Doing some nice petals all around. And then finally, I'll just do one kind of like this over here. And we're pushing all the color downward. Okay? And now that I have this, I'm going to revert to my number 8, because now we've got our petals, our main petals. And I'm going to get that second pink that we have, and I'm going to lightly go in and add some nice detailing around the edges so that it, while it retains the nice softness of pink, we want to give some more shaded areas in our petals. And so I'm lightly picking areas that I want to have that effect. And the beautiful thing about this etcher paper is that it remains damp for long enough that I can do my whole base painting and then go in and add darker hues. It's also the perfect level of dampness and dryness right now that I'm able to get a beautiful blend. It's not hard-edged, it's just perfect. I cannot emphasize how perfect it is if I've not said it already. So I'm adding a couple of strokes in between as well, really pulling those colors into the yellow, making sure I'm not covering up all the white space that we've achieved with our initial strokes, okay? That is important. Oh, looks like an Alberta wild rose. Oh, great. I'm glad. As long as it looks like a flower, guys, I'm okay. You've made my day if you say it looks like a flower you know of or something like that. All right, I'm just going to try and highlight some of these edges. And by highlight, I mean just giving it more of an outline and thinner strokes here, just so we got some nice lights and darks. I'm going to do some thing over here as well. Yeah, I could sort of do these on repeat for a long, long time just to watch that color seep in and really blend in. It's so therapeutic, so calming, so addicting. And just to see the soft blends that you can get with this is, I don't know, it's something short of a miracle really to really see this happen and you're like, oh my gosh, I am painting this. This is so pretty. So I'm just doing light strokes for the center to sort of give us that nice blend, dark to light. And then I like the shape of this petal, but I just want to give it a little more definition, so I'm just adding a little bit more here. Without really covering up any of the white space. Okay, so I like how this flower has turned out. I'm going to leave this as is. And now we can move on to doing our chrysanthemums. And so chrysanthemums, I had used mauves and purples. So let's try and use some of those colors because I think they would complement this really well. Chrysanthemums come in various different colors as well. So if you feel like you want to try something else, go for it. I am going to get, actually, I think a nice darker rose perhaps would work. Now this looks very dark, so I'm just going to try and see what this color looks like. This one's called Rose Madder Hue. Let me just see if it's too close to this, then we're not going to use it. Yeah, so it's too close to that. I'm not going to use this. However, I could mix it with one of the purples that I have. So let me just pick one of the purples I had used. I think this one's a good one. The Ultramarine Pink. And I'm using the number 8 to mix it. Actually, you know what? I'm going to put the number 8 down. Why waste color? I'm going to use the number 4 because that's what I will use to paint this flower. So I'm getting some of that hue. I think it's a very pretty pink. Oh, sorry, purple or mauve, whatever you want to call it. I definitely need to mix a ton more for you to be able to see it. And then let's throw in some of the cobalt violet in there as well. I think that was also a very nice mauve hue. So I think these two will be a good combination. And you can fluctuate with, giving it some darker lines here and there. Okay, so I've got a good enough mix here. So I'm going to start off with doing our center petals and then slowly evolve outside. So you want to go from dark in the center to light outside. So let's do that. So squeezing this out to make sure I don't have too much color sitting on my brush, making sure I got a nice fine pointed tip. We're going to start with doing our first flower here at the top. And I can see this is getting a little bit too bright, so I'm just going to lower the brightness so you guys can see better. There we go. We're starting off by using just the tip and lightly pressuring and doing these little strokes, kind of enveloping like a little cocoon almost in the center, making sure we've got like enough white space in between our strokes. And then I'm just going to do a couple of little lines at the very top to kind of indicate, or a couple of little strokes at the top to indicate the background petals, okay? Now once this is done, I'm going to dip my brush in water, get a little bit more of that pinky hue, and I'm also essentially watering down my color here. And we're going to go ahead and create petals and hope that they turn out to be lighter. And again, we're leaving white space in between to the best of our capabilities. And give your petals some flow. And by flow, I mean instead of just doing straight commas, give it a little bit of a wiggle as you're painting it on, and allow them to dance almost. So I'm going to do a couple smaller ones here, and then we're going to sort of layer the ones on the outer so that they look like it's fuller. And as I'm doing the outer ones, we want to make sure it's watered down a bit more, so it comes lighter, and this way you've got a good definition between all the petals that you're doing, and you're giving more structure to your flower. because it's got so many petals, and it's almost like like a dahlia almost. So I'm just trying to do some light ones at the top, and then just lightly add tiny ones peeking out from the bottom. And that's it. Just make sure the shape of the flower is good enough. So if you need to add some more peeking petals here and there, just end off with doing that. And then one last thing I want to do is just get some of the darker purple and just maybe add a couple of strokes on the inside here, just so you can see some definition with where these petals are and where the shadow is. And you're not painting the full petal, you're just painting a portion of it, and again, to indicate shadow. Okay, so now the same thing that we've done here, we repeat at least 2 more times, I would say. And you can do one slightly larger and one slightly smaller. I'll leave that up to you guys. You guys can decide. And also you can decide on placement. So one of the exercises in learning composition is, going out on a whim and going with what you feel would work for you as well. And say, like, don't dash your ideas. Like, what I'm trying to encourage is, if you have an idea, instead of wondering and second guessing yourself, is it right? Is it wrong? Try it. And then if you feel like it looks wrong or you don't like it, switch it up. But if you don't try it, you're never going to exert your style or your thinking behind your artwork. So that's my 2 cents on that. Okay, so getting some more of this color, we're going to go ahead and do another one. Let's do one over here, and I'm going to slightly tilt my page so it's facing sort of this way. And we're doing the same thing. We're doing the center first, and notice I'm just lightly grazing my brush to get that nice center, leaving a little bit more white space than I did in the previous one. Pushing all the color downward. And now I'm going to go in for that. I'm going to water down my color by just dipping my brush in water, and I'm going to get a little bit more of the mauvey pinky hue and start painting our petals that are downward here. Remember the dancing petals that I was talking about? Make sure you give your petals some nice flow. And then lots of layers by just overlapping, not really overlapping, alternating in between your previous petals. And as you go outward, you're just adding more water to your color, okay? So now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and get that darker mauve that I have. And just using just a little bit of it on the tip of my brush, I'm going to go in and lightly graze along the bottom of the inner part. And then just kind of really touch on some of the inner petals as well. Get a nice blend for our outer petals, so it gives us a little more definition for background petals and yeah, layering, so to speak. All right, so that is good. I would probably do one more layer of color after this dries, just so that there's a little bit more differentiation between these two. But I think for now this is fabulous. We're doing one more of these before we call it quits with our main flowers. So let's just do one more of these down over here. I did mention down at the bottom. So this one I'll be more, I'll paint this one facing more towards the top here and not so much where you're able to see the center and whatnot. So lots of layers with the petals overlapping, and then keeping it lighter and looser. So a lot of color dabbing, you could say, and a little bit of fluffing involved. So I've added a little bit of that pink in my mixture as well, just to sort of have it stand out, blend in with a little bit of this flower here. And then I'm getting some of that darker purple. I'm just highlighting the centers and the bottom of these, and the bottoms of these petals, just a little bit. Kind of give it some depth. And then just with a very light version of this color around, I'm just going to go ahead and lightly add what I like to call fluffing. And you can add some of that at the top over here as well. Actually, yeah, you could do it that way, or the other easier way of fluffing is if you just do a splatter and you kind of go in after the fact and kind of smudge out some of the areas to give you more of a natural look. So now what's happening is I've gone from super detailed in the center to like looser around the edges, and using pretty much like hues of the same color that we've been using for the flowers, so it kind of blends in nicely. So you're adding detail in a very loose manner, I would say. All right, so that's that. So we've done this. Now let's add some greenery before we do anything else, because I would say let's do like a couple of berry elements. Oh, sorry. Yes, let's do our Solomon seal. So this is olive green. Nope, I don't want to use olive green. I will use sap green, sure. So I'm going to use some of my sap green. And I'm going to create the Solomon's seal. So let's do one. I think I'll do one at the top that way. And when I do it that way, it's going to look like one of the, it'll act as like a berry element. So that will be nice, as opposed to being also a prominent flower. Just making sure I've mixed enough color here. Perfect. So using the number 4 again, I'm going to go ahead and let's do like an arc like this. And then you guys remember how the leaves are painted, right? If you're new and you have not come across that video of mine, make sure you check it out. It is part of the Flower Color Guide series where I show you how to paint this pretty flower, which is almost like a, is it Lily of the Valley, I think? Maybe Solomon's Seal is just like another name for it. I'm not quite sure. So the leaves are kind of just all along the ridges, almost like a pattern outlining the stem. And then the flowers kind of fall out at the bottom, very tiny. So I'm going to have the leaves grow smaller as we go higher up. Notice how I'm kind of fanning out the leaves and like really giving them these organic shapes that by pressing down on my brush and kind of just smudging the color around. And then we'll do one here, small-ish. There we go. Okay, so we've done one there. Let's do one more, and I'll have that one happening, like peeking out over here. So same idea with the leaves, but this is obviously a smaller rendition of it, so it's not going to be as long as that one. We're still giving the leaves that nice beautiful shape and kind of this little curve at the top here. Okay, so you want the darkest color closest to the flowers at the bottom, so that's why I'm kind of pushing my color there. There we go. And now, using the same brush with this, we're going to go ahead and create the little curves where our flowers are going to be. So just like that. Those are the two areas. That's fabulous. And now these flowers are a very light-ish, well, they're white, so you can either use an extremely light version of the green or use an extremely light gray, I would say. And this way, there's a little bit of definition for them without, you know, giving them a full color. So I'm just going to paint them as little bells. And then leave the center white. Again, these are meant to be like your background flowers, right? So we're not giving them too much detail, but at the same time, when you look at them as a whole, you're able to see that they are, you're able to decipher what they are, pretty much. So just like a little bit of a curve at the top, and then I'm closing the bottom, but I'm leaving all that white space in the center. Same thing here, and varying sizes, if you will. That's fine. And if you want to go into any of the others and just add a little bit of a dab of color just at the top, just so it spreads out and makes the top look a little bit darker, you can. So we've got these cute little delicate items at the top. And then we're gonna go into leaves right now. So we've got some nice dark green happening, some very cute little shapes happening there. So let's use our number 8 to do some bigger brushes. Okay. Well, I'm just reading a comment. Thanks, Kathy. Solomon Seal is a perfect addition. I love it. Anne Marie, I love the way you paint these delicate flowers and how you always make the composition look so nice. Thank you, Anne Marie. I'm literally just winging it. This is what I am trying to teach you guys, winging it. If you have an idea, just run with it. Paint it, see how it goes. Like, do not be afraid. It's just paper. What is the worst that can happen, right? Okay, so I'm going to mix a little bit of the raw sienna with the green that I have, the sap green. And I just want my green to be a tad different from what we have here. So that's my reasoning for mixing the color. And this way the leaves will stand out a bit more. That's my hope, at least. All right, so let's do a couple of leaves. So now, how do I place my leaves? So I definitely want this to be a nice shape where clearly it's forming diagonally with a little bit of curve at the top. So we'll definitely have some leaves sort of falling down at the bottom here. I definitely want some framing around this big flower a little bit, and maybe in between here, and then perhaps one here. So pick 3 spots in your main flower that you want your leaves to be in. And let's start with that. So I'm going to go with this plan that I just mentioned to you. Feel free to exert your creative freedom and place it where you feel it should go. Okay? So I'm going to also give this a little bit of a shape here so it looks like this is kind of framing our flower. And then I'm pushing outward to create my leaf. And then I'm just adding a little bit of a darker hue to the tip of my brush so that when I go back in to paint to add another stroke to my leaf, it's giving me a gradient in the leaf. And then push all the color down to the bottom, like where it's touching the flower, I mean. All right, so now dipping the tip of my brush in water, what I'm going to do is just sort of extend a little bit of a stem here and press down and create another leaf so it looks like it's an extension from the same stem. And pushing all the color downward, upward towards the flower. And this is also where you add a little bit of fluffing just so that things look a little more faded and fuller without you having to do too much detail. And like I mentioned before, fluffing is literally just using the same, using a lighter color to just add some detail to your painting, giving it a little bit more flow and movement. All right, so now I'm going to add some of the leaves over here at the top. So let's do one here. Can add a darker tone just by going in while it is damp and just kind of allowing it to disperse. Just need to mix a little bit more color. Just adding peaking leaves to the side of these. So we've got 1, 2, and then I said 1 around this area here. I'm just going to do stem and press down and create this leaf here. So we've got different variations in green happening because as I mix the green again, I've used different amounts of color in there. Okay, so now at this point we've got our prominent leaves. I'm just adding more of a darker tone over here so that we get that nice shadow. And then if you feel like you need to swipe off or like really add detailing to your leaves by, you know, swiping off a little bit of color, you can. Just like what I did just now. Okay, so we've got our leaves here. We've done our main flowers. Let's add a little bit of looser, lighter looking leaves. And so for that, let's mix in a little bit of, so get a different hue at this point. So if you want to add a little bit more brown, I don't know, I wouldn't use brown just because I've got quite a bit of brown in my leaves here. So I'm going to go for a little bit more of a turquoisey sort of green. Let me see what Viridian looks like. Might be a bit too turquoisey. Sorry, not turquoisey, emerald. And it is more of an emerald. So I'm going to mix a little bit of the umber in with it. And I'm going to use my number 4 to do these leaves so that they can be smaller and a little more like a background feel to them. Could even try doing like wine colored or like a darker, like a Payne's gray maybe, sorry, a lighter Payne's gray to sort of offset what we have. But this is going to be extremely watered down, guys, okay? Because we want these to be like background ones. And before I actually start, what I will do is do a little bit of a splatter in certain areas, and then we'll start painting the leaves that way. So I'll do a splatter here. I'm going to do a little bit happening, overlapping these leaves. Some at the top. I don't want too much coming on the flower. I don't mind it going over the flower, but not too much. And then let's start doing our leaves. So on a smaller scale. So using the tip of my brush, I'm just lightly drawing in my stems and then pressing down to do our leaves. You can leave some of the splatter so it looks nice and natural and adding more detail to our loose composition. And I'm just going in with a darker hue to enhance the darkness in some of these areas touching the flower. I'm going to add some over here in between. I want it to be a lot lighter, so I'm taking off some of the color and adjoining. I'm not even giving this one a stem. Oh, hold on guys. Gotta change the battery real quick. Oh, looks like it has done a bit of a fart here. What's happening? I'm gonna try and make this bigger for you guys. This is so weird. This is technology. All I did was change a battery and you can see how small the screen has gotten, which is very bizarre to me. All right, let's go with this because it doesn't seem to be doing much out of that. Okay, so we're almost sort of done. We need to add the leaves that I'm just talking about, and then we can move on to doing our final little touches. So don't worry. Okay, so continuing on with the number 4. I'm gonna go ahead and do, I said some over here at the top right there, so let's just create some. Again, remember the key is to make sure that these are light. So lots of water and less color. Just to get that nice loose look. And so now we're literally going to be fluffing and adding loose little details around our little chrysanthemums as well. And then once we've done that, in hindsight, sorry, not in hindsight, but upon looking at how it's evolved, I'm going to add a little bit of a darker green over these light green areas that we're painting in right now. So just giving it a little bit of adding movement by adding tiny little lines or curvy lines like this, and just having some loose leaves gives it a little bit of a movement. So we've got movement at the top, we've got a little bit of movement at the bottom. You can add some around in areas like this as well if you want to. giving a little bit of a curl at the bottom. I don't know if you guys can actually even see that because it's really light. And then I want to add some at the top too. And leaving lots of white space, okay? In between these guys as well, because why not? Like, it doesn't need to be completely clean and perfect in and around them. You want to make your composition look full and like there's a lot happening, and this is the best way you can do that without adding too much detail. Concentrated detail, that is. Because this in its way is adding detail, just not on a darker level. So you want to add a little bit of these little green guys happening in between these guys as well, like the darker green, our main leaves. And now I'll go in and add some of the dark green that I mentioned. So I'm going to get some of my, let's use some of the, what was it? Not the olive green, the sap green. And I'm going to mix in a little bit of that mix it in with some of the leftover pinky mauve that we had, and it's looking too much like a brown, so I'm going to mix a little bit more of the, what was this, hooker's green, because I want it to be dark, but I don't want it to be like a brown dark, because these are pretty browny to begin with. And I'll add a little bit more of the, not the olive green, I gotta really look at these colors to see the name, raw sienna, but this might also give me a lighter browny green. We want like a nice dark green, so I think if we mix raw umber, let's mix raw umber, because I want it to be darker, more of a wooded sort of green. Yeah, this is great. Raw umber with my mishmash of colors. Perfect. This is what I was looking for. So now it's not a bright green, but it's like a nice dark green. Okay. And so for these, let's, like, you can choose to do like the tiny little leaves that some of them can even overlap these guys over here. So let's start, I'm going to start and do some around this end. And this is what I mean by adding contrast to your paintings. When you add contrast on a color level, so darks and lights, then when you add contrast even with small sizing, so small and big, and then last and not least, thicks and thins, it really does a world of wonder to your compositions. So it's not only about knowing what to place and where, but it's also about making sure you've got a good enough variety of all these elements so that it really makes it stand out and makes certain elements pop. You can have some of it overlapping over the flowers as well, because why not? I'll do some just around this guy here. This would be your wet on dry painting. So I'm really going very loose with my strokes over here now to really add that nice loose detail for our flowers, and especially when we're edging around these guys here. And then in between over here as well, because you want to be able to give some nice hard definitions between some of the flowers, not everywhere, but just some areas. And this is what will kind of make your composition look fuller and more complete. So you can see it immediately breaks those two flowers apart. And then I'll just do one overlapping over this guy here, because you can, and it's the darker leaf, right? Which was the color I was using? Mixing umber, raw umber, is it? Yes. So I'm just picking areas where I feel these guys should go. So I hope you guys are also doing the same. And then we're pretty much done after this. And then I can take, if anyone has questions and stuff, feel free to put them in the comments right now. And I am happy to answer just as soon as I am satisfied with my painting here. I'll add a little bit of that overlapping stuff here as well. Just so it ties in with, you know, all the colors we've got and some nice little movement. Yeah, clearly I'm obsessed with adding movement because I can't stop myself from doing this. Like these little tenderly sort of things that I do, I absolutely love it. I think maybe it's my signature. Maybe. I'll just do a couple here. All right, and then I'm going to leave this like this. So we're not adding any more green or anything, but I will add, I'm going to add a little bit. Remember I said I'm going to add an extra layer, so to speak, for our flowers at the top, just so it bumps it up a little bit more. I'm going to do that. Hopefully I got the right color. So all I'm doing is adding little outlines to our little inner bowl, so to speak. And then just lightly highlighting some of the outer petals. And then just the underlining petals just on one side of the curve. So this way you're able to see each petal, or get a semblance of an idea of where the petals begin and end, sort of thing. So you can see the difference between the two, how one just immediately pops out and then the other one is a little, it's pretty, but it's a little bit lacking in terms of definition. So you want to just loosely add the same thing that we did there on this one. So notice I'm going like heavier on the bottom petals here, especially the ones like touching the leaf and touching the main flower. I'm kind of leaving the top portion of these open-ended so that there's more room to breathe. And then finally for this one over here, just a little bit. There we go. Okay, so that's great. I'm just going to leave it this way. And in terms of the main flower, if you feel like the pink is too isolated, you can feel free to sort of dampen some random areas around diagonally, and then just add a couple of dots of pink, and then this way it kind of ties in with everything. Or you can even do that towards the edges, and I think that should tie things in really, really nicely. But other than that, this is it for today, guys. Let me see if anyone has any questions. When do you decide to stop painting? Oh, stop of making leaves? Andy? You have to be very conscious about, that's a tough question because I get that asked a lot, but it really depends on how far you want to take it. As soon as you realize you're losing a lot of white space, that's when I would say I would stop. So for instance, for today, I really wanted to do a lot of layering. So that's why I've got 3 different variations of green. So I've got the light green, I've got the medium green, and then I've got the really dark green to make things pop. But that's just the direction I wanted to go. And as you can see, we're getting very close to like not having a lot of white space in there, and even over here. But I sort of made it work by adding the darker green on top. So really and truly, there is no easy answer to that. You really have to stand up. This is one thing I would say to everybody. Stand up when you're painting, and then have a bird's eye view of what it looks like. Because when you're sitting and you're getting a side angle view, it looks very different. So you need to stand up and have take a look, and if you feel like I'm stumped, I'm not quite sure what to do, walk away from your piece and then come back half an hour later, do something else, come back, and then you'll automatically know what to do and where to go with it. You'll feel better about it too. So hope that makes sense. Oh, you're welcome, Kathy. Glad you like it. I guess if no one has any questions, thanks guys for joining me. If you like this video, please make sure you hit the like button. And if you've not subscribed, make sure you subscribe, guys. And last, another reminder, make sure you sign up for the holiday postcard special. Today is the last day for the early bird rate. Okay. All right, guys. Thanks so much for joining, and we'll chat soon. Bye.